Have you ever felt uneasy before a flight? That nagging fear something might go wrong? For 239 people, that fear became a horrifying reality. This is their story, and the enduring mystery of Flight MH370. It's March 8, 2014. Malaysian Airlines Flight MH370 lifted off from Kuala Lumpur, headed for Beijing. But somewhere over the Indian Ocean, it vanished, without a trace. No distress calls, no ransom demand, nor bad weather or evidence of technical failures. How does a modern airliner, with 239 souls on board, simply vanish? It's a question that has haunted investigators, families, and the entire world since that fateful day in March 2014. Was it a catastrophic accident, a sinister plot, or something even more chilling? We're about to explore three possible scenarios, each more haunting than the last. To understand what really happened, we need to go back. The first scenario begins just as you might expect. You're on board, maybe watching a movie or drifting off to sleep, when suddenly, the plane makes an alarming 180-degree turn back towards Malaysia. No announcements, no explanations, just a silent, ghostly turn. As we later learned from military radar data, MH370 had deviated dramatically from its planned route, turning back across the Malaysian peninsula and then towards the Indian Ocean. The plane's turn was no accident. It was executed at a critical intersection in airspace, perfectly timed to slip under radar detection, suggesting someone with intricate knowledge of navigational routes was in control. As the plane changed course, its communication systems went dark, one by one. First the transponder, then the ACAR's messaging system. This methodical shutdown points to a deliberate act, raising the specter of a possible hijacking. For hours, the plane flew on, a ghost ship in the sky. For the passengers, the terrifying reality that no rescue would come must have become apparent. But if it was a hijacking, where were the demands? The distress calls, the attempts to land? The silence is deafening and only deepens the mystery. Investigators faced a nightmarish task. With no black box data and limited radar information, piecing together the plane's movements was like assembling a jigsaw puzzle. In the dark, was it terrorists, a rogue passenger, and what was the motive? These questions remain unanswered until today. The theories are endless, each more unsettling than the last. As we unravel these possibilities, it's crucial to remember the human cost. For 239 families, this isn't just a fascinating mystery. It's an unending nightmare of uncertainty and grief. But what if the horrifying plunge wasn't caused by hijackers? What if something else had gone catastrophically wrong, leaving everyone on board helpless as the plane flew on? Imagine this chilling scenario, a sudden loss of cabin pressure at 35,000 feet. Within seconds, the air becomes too thin to breathe. Oxygen masks drop, but in the confusion and rapidly thinning air, passengers struggle to put them on. Within minutes, everyone on board slips into unconsciousness. This is the oxygen depletion theory, and it's as terrifying as it is plausible. In this scenario, MH370 becomes a ghost plane, flying on autopilot for hours with no one at the controls. Its passengers and crew, victims of hypoxia, sit silently in their seats, unaware of their fate. Picture the eerie calm inside the cabin. No panicked screams, no frantic attempts to contact loved ones. Just row after row of unconscious bodies. The only sound, the quiet hum of the engines as the plane continues its journey to nowhere. This theory aligns disturbingly well with the plane's unexplained course changes. If the pilots were incapacitated, the autopilot could have kicked in, following its last programmed waypoints. This could explain the strange turns and altitude changes detected by radar. But how likely is such a scenario? More than you might think. Aviation history is haunted by similar incidents. In 2005, Helios Airways Flight 522 crashed in Greece after a loss of cabin pressure, left everyone on board unconscious. The plane flew for hours on autopilot before running out of fuel and crashing. In 1999, a Learjet carrying professional golfer Payne Stewart lost cabin pressure shortly after takeoff. The plane flew for 4 hours with its occupants presumably unconscious or already dead before crashing in South Dakota. These cases show the chilling potential of the silent killer, that is hypoxia. At high altitudes, the human body can be robbed of oxygen so quickly that victims might not even realize what's happening. They might feel euphoric, even giddy, as their brains slowly shut down. For MH370, this theory could explain the lack of distress calls or attempts to land. If everyone on board was unconscious within minutes of the depressurization, there would have been no one left to cry for help. The oxygen masks would have deployed automatically, but they're only designed to last for about 15 minutes, just long enough for a pilot to descend to a safe altitude in normal circumstances. If the pilots were already incapacitated, those precious minutes of oxygen would have done little to save the passengers. As the plane flew on, its fuel would have eventually run out. The engines would have sputtered and died, leaving the aircraft to glide silently through the night sky before plummeting into the vast emptiness of the Indian Ocean. This scenario paints a haunting picture of MH370's final hours. No dramatic struggle in the cockpit, no terrified passengers making final phone calls, just silence, as 239 souls drifted through the night, unaware of their impending doom. Yet, as plausible as this theory might seem, it still leaves us with troubling questions. If it was a simple mechanical failure, why did the plane's communication systems go dark? Why were there no automated distress signals? And how do we explain the deliberate seeming turns and course changes? This brings us to the third disturbing possibility. Based on debris analysis and flight simulations, experts conclude that it wasn't a gentle glide into the ocean. No, this was a violent, uncontrolled plummet from the sky. Picture yourself in that cabin, the sudden lurch as the plane begins to drop, the sickening feeling in your stomach as you realize something is terribly wrong. Oxygen masks deploy, dangling uselessly as the aircraft plunges through the air at breakneck speed. The terror the passengers must have felt in those final moments is unimaginable. But what caused this catastrophic descent? The evidence points to a third chilling scenario: deliberate actions by someone in the cockpit. The plane's communication systems were methodically disabled, its course dramatically altered. These weren't the hallmarks of a random mechanical failure. They suggest intent, purpose, a plan. This raises a chilling scenario: mass murder-suicide. The thought that a pilot, entrusted with hundreds of lives, could intentionally cause such devastation is almost too horrifying to contemplate. Yet, it's a theory investigators can't ignore. The debris tells a grim tale. Experts conclude that the landing gear was likely extended during the crash. This would have increased drag, causing the aircraft to sink faster, potentially an attempt to hide evidence of the crash. The impact was described as anything but a soft landing, emphasizing the extreme force involved. But what do we know about the pilot? Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah was an experienced aviator, with over 18,000 flight hours. By all accounts, he was a professional, dedicated to his job. Yet some have questioned his mental state in the days leading up to the flight. Was there something in his background that might explain such a drastic action? Investigators pored over his personal life, his finances, his relationships. They found a man who seemed stable, even happy. No red flags that would typically indicate someone on the brink of such a heinous act. The last words from the cockpit, a simple "good night," have been analyzed endlessly. Experts have scrutinized the tone, the stress levels in the voice, searching for any clue that might reveal the pilot's state of mind. But like so much about this flight, the final communication offers more questions than answers. The evidence seems to point towards deliberate action in the cockpit, but it's crucial to remember that we're dealing with fragments of information. The full truth of what happened that night might be forever lost to the depths of the ocean. As we've explored these chilling scenarios, one thing becomes clear: the mystery of MH370 endures. A mass murder-suicide, a silent suffocation, or hijackers, each possibility more haunting than the last. But behind the theories and speculation lies a stark reality: 239 lives lost, families torn apart, questions that may never be answered. So, the next time you board a plane, will you see your fellow passengers differently? Will you wonder about the secrets they carry, the stories hidden behind their eyes? As the engines roar to life and you leave the ground behind, remember, sometimes, the greatest mysteries are the ones that fly right beside us.